All right. So would you be able to please tell us who you are first off, and what did you study while you were at Lancaster?
Yeah, so my name is Ellie, and I graduated from Lancaster technically last week, but I finished my degree in 2021. So I started in 2018 and I started studying psychology. I also did a minor in my first year, which I did in philosophy, which was super interesting. And Lancaster are really great in that they offer you the opportunity to switch if you wanted to. But I was absolutely captivated with psychology, so ended up sticking on the course, and yeah, graduated with my BSc in psychology.
And what would you say was the thing you enjoyed about doing psychology at Lancaster?
I enjoyed most.
Yeah.
That's actually a really tricky question to answer, because each of my 3 years at Lancaster doing psychology was so different. But if I had to pick one thing, it will have been across my final year when I was lucky enough to get a PEP placement, and PEP stands for Psychology Employability Programme, which I did in the Lancaster Uni Baby Lab. So the developmental psychology lab, which I absolutely loved. It was such a fantastic opportunity, and PEP is really broad. So some of them are in research, which is the route that I went down, but you can get some really great community placements as well, which I know a few of my peers did. But yeah, I did mine in research in the baby lab with Dr. Marina Bazidai, and the project that we worked on was all to do with young children's sort of the development of their skills in seeking different bits of information, and how that might predict the way that their knowledge expands, their vocabulary expands and stuff like that over the formative years. And it was really useful, because I did in third year get to pick a few of your options, your modules, and I picked a lot of the developmental psychology ones because I knew that was something that I was really interested in, and I ended up doing really well in those modules. And I'm sure it was because I got that kind of hands-on approach to it, that insight of what conducting research really looks like, and I could then link that back to my papers and maybe pick out a bit of critique a bit easier than perhaps I would have done if I hadn't done the PEP placement. And it was just a really lovely opportunity to like network with other people as well, and feel that sense of connectedness, because this was all during the pandemic, so a lot of it was online, when we were all kind of sparsely all over the place. So it was really lovely to be able to have that sense of community when I think there was such a sense of it being lost, obviously, as we all went into lockdown and separated. So I think that would definitely be my favourite thing, as much as I enjoyed my whole 3 years there. Yeah.
Definitely. So do you think, obviously, having the chance to be able to do some practical work alongside your degree, do you think that helped you with more coursework and exam elements?
Yeah, definitely. So it was a massive help, sort of academically. It was a lovely opportunity to do that little bit of wider reading around the subject as well, that I might have lacked a little bit of direction with at times, perhaps. So it sort of helps you to sort of engage with debates in literature a little bit better. And even since coming out and coming into work, the skills that I learned there about teamwork, working with different professionals, what it meant to sort of balance a number of different bits of work, so coursework, but then also my research work, was really helpful, and I think really formative to building up the skills that have, I think, led me into being fortunate enough to be in the role that I am now. So yeah.
That's really great. So now, what role do you now have now that you've finished?
Yep. So it's a bit of a grandeur title. It's just really long. But I work for Barnardo's as an education mental health practitioner, which, as I said, sounds really big, and even when I explain it, it still sounds a bit crazy. But it's low intensity cognitive behavioural therapy with children and young people. So I'm still living in Lancaster, because I absolutely wasn't ready to leave when I finished my third year. So I work in the local area with schools sort of within 5-mile distance. I've got 4 on my caseload in my training year, and I'm slowly building it up as I'm qualifying. So I work with them to do sort of low intensity early intervention for sort of common mental health difficulties that they're experiencing, and being based across a few different schools. It's a really nice opportunity to work not just with children but also with staff to try and promote sort of positive change at the sort of systemic top level rather than just at the individual level with the child as well. So it's a really broad but lovely role. And I'm still as I say, I'm training. I do a postgrad diploma actually with Edge Hill Uni, so I'm a little bit of a traitor. I've had to move to be able to do this qualification, but the skills that I learned at Lancaster, the ability to engage with the literature so rigorously, is really paying dividends and making my time qualifying really smooth.
That role sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really rewarding role as well, to be able to help young people. What would you say is your favourite thing about your job?
My current job? Oh, that's such a good question. I think it probably would be, as much as I love working with children and young people and being able to see over weekly sessions the kind of impact that you're having, or if there's a bit of complexity, sort of working with them to overcome it and maybe reevaluating why there are challenges. I think the most rewarding work for me is actually done at that top level with staff members who maybe are just now coming into a period of transition where knowledge about common mental health difficulties is just starting to surface, and the ways that schools can help is slowly being integrated into school culture and school ethos. And I think being an advocate for that and being able to give them the time to sound off ideas or support them with making the changes, I think you can really see the benefits of that on a broader level as well. Being relatively new to the role, that was what excited me most when I first started, and I could see the difference that my colleagues were making, and I think that really motivated me to want to do the same. So yeah, it's a tricky one because I absolutely love my one-to-one work with especially with the primary school kids, with the little ones, but I think the most rewarding part would definitely be the whole school work.
That makes sense. That sounds really good. So why would you say that you chose to go into this area after you graduated? Just links to obviously the enjoyment of developmental psychology while you were studying at Lancaster, and obviously the PEP placement that you had. Do you think that why you chose to go into that area?
Yeah, definitely. So I knew kind of when I was coming to the end of my degree that I loved the academic side of obviously university, with it being completely research driven and stuff like that, and having that PEP experience, sort of it built up such an affection for that community and for that kind of work that I was really motivated, although because I'd made the decision I didn't want to do a master's straight away. I wanted to get into the world of work, but I knew I wanted something that would really push me and challenge me, still provide me with that little bit of chance to explore things academically. I knew that this opportunity had just come up. It was relatively new. So the EMHP role was initiated, I think, in about 2018 was when you started to see practitioners sort of establishing themselves in schools. So really quite new. And all that you needed to be able to get onto the course and into the jobs, because you're employed first and then you're sent to a uni, was a BSc in psychology, which or actually it doesn't have to be psychology, but you needed to be able to study at undergraduate level and have graduated with a little bit of experience. So I was really fortunate to have been able to have that, to then move on to it. And I think that's really nice because it feels like you're using your degree, you're making the most of it, which can be quite a challenge in this day and age, leaving university. So I certainly don't take that for granted, because not everyone finds themselves in those kinds of situations, but just the fact that it was local and open to me was just, it was a bit of a dream come true. All the stars aligned. But I think having my academic background really pushed me to want to be able to continue that. And moving forward, obviously being 22 and graduated a couple of, in the last couple of years, I sort of right at the start of my career, I have that sort of thought of who knows what the future holds. So I'm doing this postgrad at the moment, but the world's my oyster in terms of it will lead me nicely onto masters if that's what I decide to do, or the really popular routes after EMHP, if you want to move on, are full CBT therapy or going down the clinical psychology or educational psychology routes. So I've always had a bit of a lean towards perhaps doing educational psychology further down the line. And I think being in a role that promotes that sort of personal, professional development is really, really valuable.
Definitely, that completely makes sense. So what would you say, because obviously in relation to having your academic background, it's led you into one area. How do you think you've used what you studied whilst at Lancaster, all the skills developed? How do you think those?
Was that in my role now?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a really, really good question, and there are a lot of different elements of my time. Obviously 3 years at Lancaster, it's a really good amount of time, and what we cover is so broad and so rich as well. But I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was stats, because I maybe wasn't the biggest fan of stats during my undergrad years, especially the first two, where it's quite manualized. You're just kind of going through the motions of, okay, this does this, this statistical function can tell us this. And then in my third year, when I was able to conduct my own research and my dissertation project, it became a little bit more meaningful. And I think I sort of had that realization of, oh, okay, I can get on board with stats because it's making a little bit of sense, because I was giving it meaning through the data that I was collecting. So jumping then to where I am now, that's kind of part and parcel of every day of my job. I collect a lot of data around the progress that I'm making with children and young people, how their symptoms are changing, what might be getting in the way of that, but then also how they're finding our sessions, the different changes that schools are making, and sort of measuring everything all the time for that element of obviously accountability, but being able to obviously take a step back from that, turn it all into numbers and run it through a few different sort of statistical tests, and sort of conceptualizing it in nice and easy to understand ways. It's obviously really important to making sure that the kids understand it, because it's really helpful for them to know the progress that's being made, and what their thoughts are around that can be really insightful as well and really valuable. But obviously as well, it helps us as a team to make sure that we're all on the right track, that everyone's getting the training that they need, and if there's any gaps in kind of what the service can offer as well, it helps us to identify that. So I think stats has been really valuable, as much as I probably never expected to be saying that. Thankfully, nothing has come quite as hard as my final year dissertation project, because that can be really, really complex if you are in the situation to be able to push yourself as much as my dissertation supervisor did push me. But yeah, so stats would definitely be up there, and I'm trying to think what else would also be up there. Probably just, yeah, as I said, like the breadth of the knowledge and breadth of understanding that you gain, and the ability to sort of critically reflect on debates. So, and you might see that in the work that we do again with children. If you're sort of doing a piece of work with a child or a young person, and you're maybe finding that it's not having the desired effect, it's not having the impact that you want it to have, kind of going back to the books and the basics and going back to the literature and exploring why it might not be working, and reevaluating, and just whenever you're faced with a little bit of complexity, what's kind of available to you. So being able to synthesize all of that information, and maybe, if you're writing up a report as part of your clinical notes, being able to verbalize that as well, sort of quite nicely and eloquently, is definitely a skill that is rooted in my time at Lancaster, where obviously you're so well practiced in essay writing and again thinking critically. So yeah, they would be the top two things I would say.
Oh, that makes sense. 'Cause it's like the range of different skills they teach you in terms of obviously the different types of coursework, where you've got your verbal ones in terms of presentation, and you've got your written ones like your essays, and the fact that with stats particularly, they do link it to real world things. So you know it helps you definitely. It seems like it's definitely helped you in terms of applying it to your role now, which is really great. I'd say next question would be, what do you remember about life at Lancaster, just in general?
Oh, that is such a lovely question, and it's been something that I've actually reflected on quite recently, because I had my graduation last week. We were able to actually have our ceremony, even though it was a year late. But that was really nice in a way, because it allowed myself and all of my peers to kind of reconnect again, which obviously if we'd have done that this time last year, we'd have only just been living together. So actually having that space apart and then space to come back was, yeah, it was really exciting. But what do I remember most? Probably just the buzz about campus that you get whenever you're there. So a lot of people, obviously, as you'll know, in their first year live on campus, so there's that sort of buzz that never dies, in the sense that there's always a bit of atmosphere because there's always students around, and I think that really helps sort of bring that sense of community and connectedness, because even though obviously we're all on different courses across different years, with Lancaster being intercollegiate, you can have so many different groups of friends. You can have your course friends, but then also your college friends, people that you've lived with. So I think just the amount of opportunity that Lancaster offers for that connection and being able to link in and socialise was just really, really special. Through loads of the different ways that they do that. So that could be like socials, but then with Lancaster being such a sort of dynamic city, there's always stuff in town to get involved with as well. So wherever you kind of went, it was just the sort of perfect environment to link in with other people, and really inspiring, because if you met someone on the street, for example, just in Lancaster, they might ask you if you're a student, what they were studying, and you probably find that there'd be something in common somewhere that would lead you on to just having like a really nice connection with that person. And I think that the city as a whole really values having uni students around, and the sort of innovation that brings, and yeah, the buzz and the atmosphere and all of the development that it's brought to the city. So I think that would definitely be the social side of it is what I remember the most.
What would you say that you did, like, it's obviously in terms of social things like that, what would you say you enjoyed the most or did the most outside of the academic stuff at Lancaster?
So I went walking in the lakes quite a lot. With that wasn't necessarily part of a social, but being so close, you're only about half an hour, 45 minutes up from Windermere. So often me and my housemates, every other weekend, if the weather was nice, we were off up a hill somewhere, and there were walking societies as well. So we would often like bump into them and go and get a pint at the pub or a bite to eat afterwards. So that was really lovely. And in terms of like keeping your weekends free, that was a really nice way around it. But I lived with, across my second and third year, I lived with the captain of the hockey team and the swim team. So although I'm not that sporty myself, Lancaster is an amazing place for sports and to get involved with sports clubs. I sort of could definitely experience firsthand the community that brought as well, and the sense of belonging that these friends had within their sports club that was just extended to everyone in our house as well. So there was always someone around. I was always doing lifts to swim practice or to socials and stuff, so that was really lovely. And just I think what's really nice as well about Lancaster is how many different societies there are. There is literally something for everyone. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I know I had a friend who was in the Disney Society, so she'd meet and like watch Disney films with some of her friends. There's definitely stuff like Harry Potter, but then there was, as I said, there's like sports, so like lacrosse. I think there might have even been like a Quidditch team at one point, something like that. So yeah, there's loads of sort of stuff that Lancaster support and encourage you to get involved with, which makes that sort of whole experience really worthwhile, because obviously the study is a huge part of it, but being able to take a step back and rest and recuperate and have that time with friends is so important.
So was it things like that, like societies and the community feel, were those the things that drove you to like choose to go to Lancaster, or was there another reason?
That's a really interesting question. It feels like a lifetime ago that I was in the position to be making that decision, but it probably, it wasn't too long ago, 4 or 5 years ago now, and I remember it being quite a tough decision to make, but actually what I found made it really easy to make the decision was going and visiting different unis. And the day that I came up to Lancaster, it was like it was meant to be. The sun was shining, and every other uni I'd visited, it was raining and it was grey. So I think I kind of knew then that this was the university I had to go to. It was a sign. No, but just the sense of just how beautiful the campus was, being obviously surrounded by so much nature, just the variation in the buildings and the people that you come across as well whilst you're there. Usually when you go to an open day, there's so much stuff on being presented, and it was just done in such a way that made you feel like, wow, this really is, I'm not going to be short of things to do here. It's a really inclusive environment, loads of things that are really accessible to different groups of people depending on different interests or abilities, and I think having all of that in one space on a campus, for me, and not traipsing around different parts of the city or maybe feeling really overwhelmed by just the sheer scope of it, for me the size and the sort of connectedness of Lancaster being on the uni was definitely the thing that helped me to make the decision.
No, it's like you say, we're going round the universities and you're having the chance to be able to look at that, and like say specifically at Lancaster Open Days, I've been to other unis, really see, sorry, it's getting caught up. You can really see everything that they've got to offer, and it's really nice that helped you to make the decision, and the fact that it was nice weather. That's definitely. So much hard work goes into those open days, and I think you can really tell, and when it's for you, that hard work really shines through, and I think really connects with you, and you're like, oh yeah, that's for me. It sometimes it just clicks and you don't expect it to, and it's really nice.
Yeah.
So in terms of, obviously that's why you chose to go to Lancaster, but next question would be, why did you choose to do psychology?
Oh, again, another interesting question. I chose to do psychology partly because I had studied it at A-level, and I really enjoyed it. I think teaching comes so much into that. I had a fabulous teacher who was really insightful around all of the different sort of career options, study options that you could do with psychology, it being a very broad topic that could be applied across a load of different areas. Obviously, I have stayed in psychology, but I have friends that have done psychology degrees that have gone on to do such a myriad of stuff, so project management, sort of grad schemes in the civil service. I'm trying to think of all of the other stuff. There's different things in humanities, but then different things in business. So it can really take you anywhere if you want it to, because all of the skills, the kind of buzzword in psychology is transferable. You can really, with it being the study of obviously brain and behaviour, you can apply it to pretty much anything that involves a human, which is obviously a lot of things, and a lot of jobs and career paths. So that's really, I think that's why I had that recognition that it was a really valuable topic to uncover. And I did consider it against a couple of other subjects. So I did history, but one thing that I really loved when I started to really look into what studying psychology at university level involved, was sort of how research driven it was, and how passionate that meant that our professors and lecturers were, because they could really apply their findings very, very meaningfully to the different disciplines that they were interested in. So one of our lecturers Nikki, I've forgotten her last name. I just know her as Nikki now, which is really bad, but I know that she works a lot with emergency services, and that's what a lot of her research is oriented and directed towards, is actually being applied practically to support them. And likewise, you'll see that across the whole of the department. Everyone's got their sort of their niche, their specialism, but actually really reflect very practically on the importance of their work and why it matters to real life. And I think when I started to look around different unis and think about different topics, that was probably what captured me the most about psychology, especially being fortunate enough to have done a little bit and got a little bit of that understanding at A level.
No, definitely. And then, so what led you to pick psychology at Lancaster in particular?
So there was a few reasons that led me to pick psychology at Lancaster in particular. A big one, obviously, when you are picking university courses and trying to decide what the right decision for you is, you've got to take into account what your grades are likely to look like. So having that conversation with your teachers as well around your predicted grades. And I knew that Lancasters were sort of hopefully aligning with my sort of what I was expecting to get, especially if I pushed myself a little bit to really get the grades that I needed. So I'm one of those people, well, my dad is one of those people that has a spreadsheet for everything. So it was on the spreadsheet with sort of good achievable grades that I was hoping to get. But as I said, when you come in and looking around different unis, I was fortunate enough to come on an open day where I fell in love with the uni as a whole, but then obviously got the chance to interact with a few different lecturers and students as well. One of the students who I interacted with ended up being my peer support person in my first year as well. So that was really nice and established like a really lovely relationship. And one thing that also really attracted me was, as I was walking around campus, there was a sign for job advertisements, and that's something that I was interested in doing whilst I was at uni, and I had no idea what I wanted that to look like, apart from maybe just an opportunity to earn a little bit of money. But it was for a sort of casual, really flexible role with the preschool on campus.
Yeah.
So I was able to, once I'd been offered the place, get in touch with the preschool, and meant that I had a job lined up for when I arrived in the September-October time. And I think that was a really nice sort of motivating thing to see when I came to visit, that actually, as much as the course is great and the environment is gorgeous, it's also hitting a load of different things that I wanted it to. So the chance to make friends, but also the chance to work a little bit and get that sort of work experience whilst I was there as well.
That's definitely really nice, especially the fact that you managed to get a position at the preschool, and how that, obviously it's nice that you got the chance to work with children right from the beginning. Yeah. And then obviously that's led on to the role you're in now, which is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the final question I've got now is, what advice do you have for psychology students at Lancaster, for once they graduate?
Once they graduate, I think the biggest piece of advice would be to just be gentle with yourself and take each step as it comes. So I think there is such a huge expectation on third year students to know what they're doing. And I had so many people say, just take it easy, try not to worry too much, because these things take a lot of time. But that didn't stop me from worrying and really applying for absolutely everything whilst I was trying to sit my exams, and probably causing myself a little bit more stress than what was necessary. So I think just trust the process, trust in the timing of it all, but also just give yourself that space and time to reflect when you are writing CVs or job applications, to think about everything that you have learned and try to apply it as critically and nuancedly as possible to the applications. But above everything, trust in the timing of it, because being a graduate is such a valuable sort of commodity. You'll be really, really a strong applicant for so many positions, having a BSc from Lancaster under your belt, and as I said, especially in psychology with so many transferable skills. And a lot of, if you are interested in going into mental health or the more clinical side of things, a lot of these jobs will look for additional experience that probably isn't going to be what your sort of end goal is or your sort of dream job is. So I think having the kind of realistic side of things, of sort of thinking, right, well, I might have to work in a job that will get me a bit of experience for 6 months before then moving on to something that maybe aligns with a little bit more of what I'm after. So that's what I did. I worked as a TA in a school for 6 months before getting onto the EMHP course, and then just sort of realising when you're in that role that actually you've still got so much time and so much learning to do, being at the stage that you are, especially of life, if you've gone straight from A levels to undergraduate as well. So yeah, I think just think carefully about how you can use your degree to the best of your ability, what you want to be getting out of jobs, but just take it easy, focus on your exams first, and try not to stress too much.
Really great answer, thank you very much. I don't have any questions.
Perfect.
I think that's it.
Lovely stuff. That's really great.
Thank you very much. You've been amazing.
Oh, no, thank you for having me on. It's been lovely to have an excuse to chat about all of this. And no, thank you.